Hello everyone and welcome to our virtual World Camp tour. My name is Zukes and I am the World Camp coordinator here at Pearce Williams this summer. I love World Camp so much and I hope you love it just as much as I do. I so strongly believe that when we learn about other cultures and lifestyles, not only do we get to see the beauty in them, but we also learn to be more grateful for what we have here as well. I hope you love World Camp just as much as I do, and let's get started. Today, we will be exploring the 3 buildings that we have here at World Camp through videos and pictures. Did you know that Pearce Williams is the only place in Canada that has a World Camp facility? How awesome is that? Before we start today, I want to acknowledge that here at Pearce Williams, we're walking on land that used to belong to many groups of Indigenous peoples. Today, we remember that for thousands of years, First Nations and Indigenous peoples have walked on this land. Their relationship with the land is at the center of their lives and spirituality. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, Ojibwe, and Chippewa peoples. We seek to live with deep respect on this land, as we are mindful of broken promises. We also seek to live in peace, friendship, and right relations with its people. Let's start at the Mongolian Gur. This summer, the Gur is not up, but we can take a look through some pictures. You may have heard this building called a yurt before, but in Mongolia it is called a gur. It means home in Mongolian, and these homes have been around since 600 BC. Mongolian people are nomadic, which means they move their house around multiple times a year. Because of this, they have gotten very good at setting up and taking down their gurs. It takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 hours to fully set one up, depending on the size of the gur, how many people are helping, and how often they move. The typical family moves around 3 to 4 times a year, following herds of alpacas, which provide them with meat and wool and lead to fresh water sources. You may notice that the gur's door appears a little short. This is so that humans can crouch to get in, but alpacas and other animals cannot enter. Do you see the beautiful designs on the gur's door? They are all hand-painted. These patterns are typically passed on from generation to generation, so your door would look very similar to your mother's, which would look like your grandmother's. The symbol in the middle is called an ulshi, and it's symbolizing the ever-expanding universe and the balance of life and death. It brings long life and prosperity while driving away evil spirits. The outer rope is made from horsehair. Mongolian nomads also follow horses because they lead to fresh water and greenery. Mongolia has the highest wild horse population in the world, and they use these horses for milk, labor, and hair for rope making. Let's head inside. It is polite to enter and exit the gur backwards as a symbol of respect. The opening or roof is called a tonneau, which is used as exhaust for the chimney and is a source of natural sunlight. You may have noticed that the gur is in the shape of a circle. Does your house have any rooms like this? I know mine doesn't. There are a few reasons why the gur is shaped like this. The main reason is to keep in heat. If you've ever been inside of the Pearce Williams gur, you may have noticed that it can get very hot. However, Mongolian nights can get very, very cold. Having a circle means that heat cannot get trapped in corners and is evenly spread throughout the building. Mongolian people also view the center of the gur as the center of the universe, so everything is an extension of that, creating a circle. Nearly 3/4 of the Mongolian population lives in gurs and travel all around the country. Even in big cities, 40% of the population lives in designated gur districts. Fun fact, each person living in a gur gets their own section to live and rest in. These sections are often shared by someone of the same age, gender, or family as you. Let's move on to the shanties. These are the oldest buildings at World Camp, but this summer they are being rebuilt. 1 in 7 people in the world live in a slum or slum community. So there are slums on every continent in the world. There are slums in almost every major city in the world. Los Angeles, Rio, Mumbai, New Delhi, Hong Kong, London, New York, and even in Toronto. A slum the size of ours here at Pearce Williams would typically sleep around 5 to 7 people, so they can be very overcrowded. There are some issues to overcome by people living in slums. There's often limited access to drinking water, sanitation, electricity, sewage services, as well as essential services such as medical care, schooling, policing, and fire stations. You may be wondering, do people in slums pay rent? The answer is yes. Most of the time, they do not own the land that they build on, so they would pay a landlord based on the square footage of their building. This makes you think, if you have to pay rent, how is it possible to work and make money living in a slum community? Most people in these areas work hard labor jobs in unsafe conditions and only make around $3 to $50 a week. Children as young as 5 can have full-time jobs to help support their families. Safety and security is uncommon in slum communities. Crime is often very high, and police involvement tends to be low, due to lack of funding and occasional racial profiling. People living in slums are more likely to develop diseases or allergies due to lack of access to sanitation, clean water, and medical services. There also tends to be little to no food or money security. However, there are many great things about living in a shanty. Slums are where goods and services can be found, and they are often based around recycling and repurpose old goods. It is extremely cheap to live in a slum, and they provide shelter from animals and harsh weather conditions. Slums are also a great alternative to living on the street and are often a first step in a search for reliable housing. There is often a strong development of community and neighborhood bonds that help in times of need. People living in slums also develop stronger social, recyclable, self-defense, and survival skills. Fun fact, different musical genres such as jazz, blues, rock and roll, reggae, funk, rap, and hip-hop were all founded and made popular by residents of slums.
Alright, well, welcome to the Stilt Hut. This building is typically found in Thailand, but can also be found all around the world where high water levels are an issue. These types of buildings have been around since the Bronze Age, which means that they're older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. So you might be wondering, why is this building on stilts? I don't think that my house looks like that. I don't think yours does either. So in Thailand, they are very prone to monsoons, which are very, very heavy rainstorms, which can lead to flooding. If you didn't have your house raised, a monsoon would sweep through, everything would get wet, and it would probably blow your house away. Having it raised makes it easier so that when water levels rise, your house doesn't go anywhere. Another reason why a house could be raised on stilts is to prevent animals from getting in. It means that I don't think an animal would be able to climb all the way up there, especially since most buildings would not have stairs. Stilt huts can be found all around the world, even in Canada. In northern Canada, where there's permafrost, which is when the ground is permanently frozen, houses are built on stilts to help keep them warm. When the ground's frozen, it makes it a lot harder to insulate buildings and keep them warm, so it solves that problem. So you might be wondering, how would you get into a building like this? Our stilt hut here at Pearce Williams has stairs, but you wouldn't normally have those because if you had a heavy flood, they would get washed away right away, and it makes it easier for animals to get in. So how would you get into a stilt hut? A lot of the time you'll have a rope or a wooden ladder that can easily be stored on top so it won't get washed away, or depending on where it's built, it might be built near neighboring trees that you could climb up and easily get inside. Welcome inside! So you might notice that there's a board at the foot of the door. Now, a lot of people think that this is to keep small infants inside, which with the size of ours seems a little bit silly, but actually it's because of their religious beliefs. People in Thailand believe that demons can only travel on flat surfaces, so having a board right at the door keeps them outside of the house and keeps the inside safe. So, similar to our building here at Pearce Williams, most stilt huts would only have one room, which would be shared by a family for sleeping, eating, cooking, and a bathroom. If a family was able to afford it, they would buy curtains or walls to be able to add some privacy to the bathroom. So typically our living standards here in Canada would have us have separate rooms for all of these, but in a stilt hut like this, they would all be shared. So how would you do certain things, like use the bathroom? Well, that depends. Depending on where they are and the time of year, there's sometimes a bucket that's used, or during heavy flood season, there's often just a hole drilled in the floor, which for us seems a little bit silly, but to them, it's common nature. What would you do about a fridge? In most of these buildings, there is not electricity, given that they are so often flooded. So how would you store food? Typically, food would only be harvested and caught for the day or the week that it's needed so it would stay fresh. In the areas where stilt huts are built, they would normally depend on fresh vegetables, fish, and rice, which can be easily stored and cooked for the next day. How could you fit a bed in here? Depending on the size of the family, you may be able to fit 1 or 2. Instead of having a typical mattress like we would, people in Thailand often build mattresses out of straw that get tied together so they're easier to stack and store inside of these buildings. A fun fact, you can actually build a stilt hut in the middle of the ocean. A group called the Baju refugees, who were, I believe, exiled from Thailand, actually built a stilt hut in the middle of the ocean on top of the coral reef. It was able to be sustainable, they had food brought in from them on boats, and they lived 6 hours from the nearest land. Those people actually got motion sickness when they stepped on land, which is weird because we normally get that at sea.
So another thing you might notice, it's not locked right now, but this building would typically have a lock on it, which compared to some of the other buildings here at World Camp is a big safety advantage, and that would help keep this family even safer. So if we look inside, it's made mostly of wood, and then the roof is tin, but this would also depend on where the family was and their access to resources. So it's a pretty big room. And again, you would have maybe in the corner a hole for the washroom, curtains if the family could afford it, places to store food and other belongings, a couple beds. Hello, I hope you enjoyed your tour. So I want to share with you today a book called If the World Were a Village. This book helps me understand a little bit better how our global population is divided and some of the issues that people around the world face that we may not understand as well here in Canada. So here is If the World Were a Village. Welcome to the global village. Earth is a crowded place, and it is getting more and more crowded all the time. As of mid-2017, the world's population was around 7,500,000,000 people. 34 countries have more than 40 million. 13 countries have more than 100 million people. China has over 1,400,000,000, while India has more than 1,300,000,000 people. Numbers this big are hard to understand, but what if we imagine the whole world as a village of just 100 people? In this imaginary village, each person would represent 75 million people from the real world. 100 people would fit nicely into a small village. By learning about the villagers, who they are and how they live, perhaps we can find out more about how our neighbors in the real world and the problems they face in the future. Ready to enter the global village? Go down to the valley and walk through the gates. Dawn is chasing away the night shadows. The smell of wood smoke hangs in the air. A baby awakes and cries. Come and meet the people of the global village. The village stirs and comes to life, ready for a new day. Who are the people of the global village, and where do they come from? Of the 100 people in the global village, 60 are from Asia, 16 are from Africa, 10 are from Europe, 8 are from South America, Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. 5 are from Canada and the United States. 1 is from Oceania. Can you find the 100 people of the village in this picture? Count the size of the groups and match them with the continents as they are listed above. More than half the people in the global village come from the 6 most populated countries. 19 are from China, 18 are from India, 4 are from the United States, 4 are from Indonesia, 3 are from Brazil, and 3 are from Pakistan. In the global village, there are almost 6,000 languages, but more than half of people speak these 8. 19 speak a Chinese dialect, and of these people, 14 speak the Mandarin dialect. 13 speak English, 8 speak Hindi, 7 speak Spanish, 6 speak Arabic, 4 speak Bengali, 4 speak Russian, 3 speak Portuguese. If you could say hello in these 8 languages, you could greet well over half the people in the village. A bell chimes in a church, a wooden gong sounds at a temple, a muezzin leads prayer from the minaret of a mosque. The villagers are called to worship. What religions do the people of the village follow? In the village of 100 people, 33 are Christians, 21 are Muslims, 16 are non-religious or atheist, 14 are Hindus, 12 practice shamanism, animism, and other folk religions, 5 are Buddhists, and 2 belong to other global religions such as Judaism, Sikhism, Jainism, And there has been a big change for two of the groups. 100 years ago, there were 12 Muslims compared with 21 today. There was only one person in the village who was non-religious, while 16 gathered today. The smells and sounds of the market draw you near. The tables are piled with fresh baked breads, vegetables, tofu, and rice. Chickens cluck and ducks quack. In a pen not far away, a cow moos at the passing crowd. The villagers have many animals. They help to produce food or are a source of food. There are 31 sheep and goats, 23 cows, bulls, and oxen, 28 pigs, 3 camels, 2 horses, 2,100 chickens. Although nobody knows for sure, there are about 21 times as many chickens as people in the global village. Besides the animals, there's other food in the global village. Wheat and other grains, rice, beans, vegetables, and much more. All in all, there is no shortage of food. If all the food were divided equally, everyone would have enough to eat. But the food isn't divided equally. So although there is enough food to feed the villagers, not everyone is well fed. 33 people in the village do not have a reliable source of food and are hungry some or all of the time. 11 people are severely undernourished and are always hungry. So, 44 of the people in the village do not have food security. They cannot always be sure they will have enough to eat. The other 56 villagers are food secure. They have enough food to survive and even thrive. In most of the village, the air is healthy and the water is clean, but not all villagers are so fortunate. For some, the air and water are soured by pollution, putting them at risk for diseases, or water may be in short supply. Instead of turning on a tap, some villagers must walk long distances to find clean water. Fresh air and drinkable water are necessities. How many people in the village of 100 have clean air and a nearby source of water? 88 have access to a source safe of water in either their homes or within a short distance. The other 12 do not, and must spend a large part of their day simply getting safe water. Most of the work of collecting water is done by women and girls. 69 have access to adequate sanitation. They have public or household sewage disposal, while 31 do not. They are at risk for certain diseases caused by poor sanitations, such as parasite infections, dysentery, cholera, and typhoid. 12 breathe clean air, while 88 breathe air that is unhealthy because of pollution. A bell calls for the young people of the village to school, but for some children, there is no school to go to, or they must work to help their family. How many people in the village of 100 go to school, and how many go to work? There are 36 school-aged villagers between ages 5 and 24, but only 30 of them attend school. There is one teacher for these students. The other 6 village children who could be in school are working instead. 3 of them work around the house or for their family on farms and small businesses. The remaining 3 are child laborers. They work in fields, factories, and mines, sell things on the streets, and may even serve as child soldiers. Because not everyone in the village has gone to school, not everyone can read or write. In fact, of the people old enough to read, 16 are illiterate. They cannot read at all. More males are taught to read than females. There are 63 adults in the village who could have jobs, but only 52 of them are working. 6 people want to work but can't find jobs, while another 5 are in school. There are also another 6 people who are retired who do not wish to work or cannot work. In one part of the village, someone buys a new car. In another, a man repairs the family's bicycle, their most valued possession. How much money do the people in the global village have? If all the money in the village were divided equally, each person would have about $32,133 per year. But in the global village, money isn't divided equally. The 10 richest people have nearly 85% of the world's wealth. Each has more than $273,133 a year. The poorest 10 each have less than $2 a day. The other 80 people have something in between. Half the people in the village average about $6 a day.
The average cost of food, shelter, and other necessities in the village is more than $5,000 a year. Many people don't have enough money to meet these basic needs. In fact, 11 villagers live on less than $2 a day. What possessions do the villagers have? In the village, there are 95 radios, 79 televisions, 120 telephones, about 100 are cell phones, 51 computers. There are also 2 trucks, 18 automobiles, and 22 bicycles. Dusk arrives and then darkness. In many homes, electric light spills out into the streets. In others, the dark is kept away with candles, oil, lamps, and lanterns. How many people of the village of 100 have electricity? 85 have electricity, while 15 do not. Of the 85 who have electricity, most only use it for light at night, but some of the villagers have other energy needs. They need energy to manufacture and transport goods and themselves for other uses at home and at work. Long ago, wood was the #1 energy source for the global village, but today there are other sources. 80% of the village's energy comes from fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and gas, that have to be pumped or mined from underground. 11% comes from nuclear power, while 9% comes from renewable sources, such as wind and water. Today, 100 people live in the global village. How many people have lived here in the past? In around 1000 BCE, only 1 person lived in the village. In 500 BCE, 2 people lived in the village. In 1 CE, 3 people. In 1000, 5. In 1500, 8. In 16,050, 10. In 18,000, 17. In 19,000, 32. And in 2017, 100 people lived in the village. What will our village be like in the future? How fast will it grow? In the year 21,000, there will be almost 250 people in the village. This is an important number because many experts think that 250 is the maximum number of people the village can sustain. Even then, there may be widespread shortages of food, shelter, and other resources. Fortunately, groups like the United Nations and many governments and private organizations are working hard to make sure that the village of the future is a good home for all who live in it. Their goal is a global village in which food, shelter, and other necessities are basic rights for all. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed your virtual World Camp tour. I hope you learned something new and that you want to do some research of your own into how people around the world live. Remember, just because someone's house, culture, or lifestyle is different than yours doesn't mean that it's worse or better. Everyone has their own story to tell, and when we embrace our differences, we make the world a better place. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your virtual camp.